So in the last lecture on atrial kick, I said something that may have caught some of you off guard. I said that as the heart gets older, the ventricle becomes less able to push blood, and so it's a good idea if we can put more blood into the ventricle, which seems, on the face of it, to be contradictory. However, this video will explain why it's not and what I meant by that. It all has to do with a law called the Frank-Starling law, which has to do with frog legs, believe it or not. We need to start the story with a man named Otto Frank. So we'll write Otto above here. Here's a good German named Otto Frank. They were doing a lot of studies on the heart in the late 19th century and the 1800s. That's why so many parts of the heart have German names to them, like Bachmann's bundle and bundle of His. So anyhow, Otto Frank was doing some experiments with frog legs, and he found out that if he took a frog leg and connected it to electricity, of course the frog was no longer attached to it, if he hit it with a little bit of juice, a little electricity, the frog leg would contract. Well, this was not news because scientists had already discovered a relationship between muscle contraction and electricity. But what Otto Frank found was that if he stretched the leg out prior to hitting it with electricity, the contraction was more forceful. He didn't have an explanation for it, but he did have positive correlation between stretching of the muscle fibers and a more forceful contraction. Years went by, and over in England, a physician by the name of Starling, who was of some renown, began looking over Otto Frank's work and carried it further and applied it to the heart. And he thought, if stretching muscle fiber means a more forceful contraction, if we stretch the ventricles, would they contract more forcefully? And he did his experiments, and he verified that. He validated his initial thought. This is sometimes referred to, the Frank-Starling law is sometimes referred to as the rubber band effect. Because if you think about it, the more you stretch a rubber band, the further you stretch it, the more forcefully it will snap back. Frank-Starling law, sometimes called the rubber band effect, will have an effect on cardiac output. And how does this relate to atrial kick? Well, here we go with the heart. If we can get the ventricles full of blood, if we can get the atria to contract and get this blood up here into the ventricles will be stretched. If the ventricles are stretched, when they go into systole, they will contract more forcefully. So it actually helps to have more blood in the ventricles because it will make them eject more. It makes the heart muscle work more efficiently. I hope that cleared up my earlier statement in the atrial kick video. And we have one more thing to talk about, the Maestrini here. Prior to Otto Frank and Dr. Starling, an Italian scientist named Maestrini, actually had the same idea, but somehow his voice was not heard, and this effect, this mechanism, has become known as the Frank-Starling law. In fact, it's even sort of, Otto Frank has been knocked out, and most people just refer to it as Starling's law now. But again, he did have some help from Otto Frank and Dr. Maestrini.